I watched a conversation today by a bunch of black male Trump supporters. They had a conversation with Frank Luntz, who is a conservative pollster. It was a conversation that really made me drop my head in many ways. The things that these young men, all African-American men under 40, were saying about Trump and about Vice President Harris just really caused me to see even more so how terrible of a job we have done, that is the older generation, at teaching these younger people what white supremacy is especially. Because these young men had no idea what white supremacy is and why that should be the starting point of any conversation when it comes to whether or not you're going to vote for Donald Trump or Kamala Harris. I want you to watch this conversation with me. I'm going to react to it and set the record straight in some ways. And it's just a shocking conversation, quite frankly, to know that we have young African-American men who are this unserious and who are this uninformed about what's really happening in America, what America is all about. And once again, what is America all about? White supremacy. White supremacy. And these young men act as if they had no clue what white supremacy was. Not one time in this conversation did Project 2025 come up. Not one time did the insurrection come up. There was only a scant mentioning of systemic racism, white supremacy, and so on. So it wasn't really a serious conversation, but it's one that I want to share with you because there's a lot to learn about, again, how bad of a job we older folks have done in educating the younger generation. Stay with me. Hello, everybody. I am attorney Augustus Corbett, one half of the Defiant Lawyers. Each and every week, we bring you at least one legal analysis of some trending story regarding politics, policies, personalities, or pop culture to empower you with the information you need to defy this unjust legal system and to nullify systemic racism. If that interests you, and I certainly hope it does, please like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell so you'll get notification every time we drop one of these videos. Now, before we get into this video, please go to Amazon.com, grab a copy of my book, Education in Justice, because you need this book if you have an African-American son in public schools. I assure you first and foremost that his school is mistreating him and other young African-American males that are in their care. You probably know nothing about it, and I'm going to inform you about those ways that they mistreat young black boys. And I'm going to also inform you with what you can do to try to help your son. All right, so grab your copy of my book. Now, we're going to go to this conversation. It, again, is sad in many ways. In many ways, what you're going to hear coming from these young African-American male Trump supporters and voters, I think all of them are planning to vote for Trump, is sad. It's sad. It's the reason why I named this Disinformation and Distraction Drive Black Men to Trump. Because if you really start from where you should start from when dealing with Trump and J.D. Vance, which is, again, white supremacy, you would never end up at pulling the lever for those two men, just given their commitment to the preservation of white supremacy. But you'll hear the result and the consequences of all this disinformation that is targeted toward African-American men. So let's go there.
In an election that appears too close to call, every vote in every swing state matters. But some votes matter more than others. Donald Trump is having trouble among suburban voters and younger women in particular. But there are some groups where he is far outperforming the usual Republican vote. One group vital for the Democrats on Election Day are younger African American men, usually a reliable vote for the Democrats. But this time, black men under age 40 seem to be up for grabs. And that's not typical of any election. We at America Speaks wanted to understand why they're up for grabs, so we convened a national conversation with younger black men supporting Donald Trump. Get ready to have your assumptions challenged. This is a conversation you can only get right here on Straight Arrow News.
There is one thing that I got to correct. Frank Luntz is overstating the support from black males that he assumes Trump will get. Now, an NAACP poll recently said that 1 out of 4 African American men under 50 were leaning toward voting for Trump. That means 3 out of 4 are not leaning toward voting for Trump. So the question then becomes, is that 1/4, that 25% of eligible registered black male voters, will not having them pull the lever for Kamala Harris, will that affect the outcome of the election? And I say that because, again, 3 out of 4 are not with Trump. Okay, 3 out of 4, according to the snapshot that the NAACP, and take it, let me say this, it is only a snapshot. We still got 50-something days away from the election, so things could go either way. But I just want to correct, because he says the black male vote is up for grabs. No, he's overstating it. A percentage of black male voters is up for grab. All right, so let's go back to this conversation.
I have been waiting with anticipation for this conversation. And I'm sure the people looking at this Zoom right now and the people who are on it have jumped to conclusions about what you all are going to say about American politics. I want to begin this with a simple question to each one of you individually. Manuel, I'm going to start with you. If the election were held today, who would you go for president?
Definitely Donald Trump.
Kenneth.
Donald Trump.
Chianti.
Donald Trump.
Tyree.
Donald Trump.
Michael.
Trump.
Damien. Damien, we can't hear you.
Donald J. Trump, I'm sorry.
James.
Trump.
Chris.
Trump.
KD.
Trump.
Kittrell.
Donald Trump.
Carlin.
Donald Trump.
Kareem.
Donald Trump.
Naeem.
Big 45, Agent Orange, Donald Trump.
Okay, we do the jokes in a couple minutes. And Dan.
Trump.
Okay, I got to understand from you all. You know that typically the African American community casts over 90% of their votes for Democrats. You know that in the last election, Joe Biden got over 90% of the black vote. Go back.
So let me once again say, for every one of those young black men who said that they were supporting Trump, 3 are not. 3 are not. For every one of those who said they are, 3 are not. All right, keep that in mind.
2016, same thing with Hillary Clinton. It's always been 88, 90, 92%. This is the first election where the Republican candidate in some polls is getting 1/3 of the younger male black vote, 40 years of age.
No, I've not seen a poll that said 1/3, which is 33%. I've not seen that. That is disinformation. Frank Luntz, who's a national pollster, he's a GOP pollster by and large. He bills himself as sort of nonpartisan and unbiased, but he has primarily worked for the GOP. And I know he is overstating the support that Trump has from black men. It's not a third. It's not a third.
And under. Why are you voting for Trump when your community has so historically voted for the Democratic candidate? And this time that candidate is herself African American. Who wants to start?
I mean, I'll honestly start. I'll say that, I'm really a Democrat. And if it was another day and another time and another age, I probably would be going toward the Democratic side of voting. But in the time that we live in the 4 years that we just had coming off of a Democratic run, I feel like the change that everyone keeps asking for and that they're looking for is really a Republican change. When Republican was in office and we had to deal with COVID, the economy was stronger. There were more jobs. There were things going on inside COVID that should probably not even have been happening during COVID, because of the lockdown, because of everything. And then now, 4 years later, after Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, who was just the vice president, were in office, nothing really changed. Nothing got better. A lot of stuff got worse, and I feel like a Republican change is what we need. And I feel like Donald Trump is the answer.
I'll just do it.
That's disinformation, what that young man just said. He says that he thinks the country needs a Republican change because things were better under COVID. Well, there's some things that he's forgetting. First, he's forgetting that Trump inherited a very good economy from Obama. Trump messed that economy up because he mishandled COVID. Number two, he's forgetting that things were not that good because there were a lot of African-American people, especially African-American men, who were dying from COVID. Do you remember the days where cities like New York City had these ice trucks sitting outside of hospitals and nursing homes because of all the tens of thousands of people that were dying daily? I don't know what he's talking about when he says things were so good under Trump. And because Trump mishandled COVID, right, the economy that he inherited from Obama tanked and inflation shot through the roof. Do you remember all that? Well, apparently he has forgotten that. And so what he said, when he says that he thinks a Republican change is needed, it was the Republicans who got us in this mess in the first place. Because when Obama was president, and if you recall, Obama inherited an economy that had tanked. I mean, the country was almost about to file bankruptcy. There were companies that were falling through the roof. The three major automobile companies were at the point of collapsing. Obama bailed out insurance companies, and turned everything around and started creating jobs, millions of jobs. And he did that for 8 years and handed that off to Trump, who messed it up, again, because of the way he mishandled his malfeasance and the way he mishandled COVID. So I don't know what this young man is talking about. And the fact that hundreds of thousands of lives were lost needlessly, many of them disproportionately so, African-American men who were dying. I think the leading group of men who were dying, and this young man here says that we need to go back to another Republican. That's crazy. That's erroneous. That's not based on facts. And that's why I wanted to bring this conversation to you, because I'm going to fact check these people. They are suffering from disinformation, and that disinformation has them distracted from the thing they should be focused on more so than anything else, and that is white supremacy and not the price of eggs and bread, which are coming down, right? Biden has done a great job of reducing the inflation, the high inflation that he inherited from Donald Trump. Let's go back.
But I'm basically voting for Trump because almost for the same reason a lot of people don't vote for Trump. It's like I am basically voting against the Democratic Party. I noticed Frank did mention that, your community typically votes a certain way. I don't really identify with any community but Christians. I'm gonna just be honest with you. And I do think there's a Christian case to be made for either political party. That's your own conviction. But I do think that there's a lot of groups that are currently I currently think that the Democratic Party of today has veered so far to the left that it's becoming the general nominee, the person that's running for president, is basically a socialist. I would like something more center. I think Trump is actually not as right as people say he is, which is actually quite interesting. So he's actually the center candidate. So I'm voting basically against the Democratic Party. Just to wrap up, I'm somebody that wants to start a family within the next 10 years. I'm literally at my girlfriend's dorm while she's out going to get the food. You know what I mean? Like I'm trying to,
Now I know why she's your girlfriend.
no, but seriously, like, I want to marry her. Probably, I'm about to turn 21. I want to marry her before I turn 26. Don't tell her. But but I do have a vested interest in how the economy is going to look, and I don't really think that I can trust Kamala or anybody from the Democratic, or let me just say the most prevalent voices in the Democratic Party today.
All right, so he has an issue with the Democratic Party. I've said, I think, 1,000 times now, a little bit of exaggeration there, that I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I am an independent voter. But I know the facts. And the facts are, today's Democratic Party has done more for the African American community than today's Republican Party ever thought about. As a matter of fact, once the Southern strategy took place, that is, the Dixiecrats left the Democratic Party and went over into the GOP, the Democratic Party began to really push a black agenda with the passage of the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, the Fair Housing Act, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, and a host of other laws that really broke the back of Jim Crow and began to lift African Americans out of poverty. Also, because of Lyndon Johnson, who signed all those laws I just mentioned, but he also started this war on poverty that also greatly benefited African Americans. All right. And yeah, we know Lyndon Johnson used the N-word and so on. We know that. But the legislation that he signed into law, that he championed, really made a profound impact on the African American community. And you got to give that credit to the Democratic Party. And this administration, the Biden-Harris administration, is second to Lyndon Johnson's war on poverty. All you got to do is just go to Google, type in White House fact sheet, and put the word black, and a web page will come up from the White House that shows this long list of accomplishments that the Biden and Harris administration did for the African American community. Like billions of dollars in HBCUs. Billions. Trump brags about $250 million that he argues that he gave to HBCUs, but the truth of the matter, let me just tell you what really happened with that. What happened with that is Trump signed into law, I think it's called the Future Act. And before he signed it into law, he took out the $250 million that were supposed to go to HBCUs. And then this African-American congresswoman by the name of Alma Adams fought to put it back in there and, pushed Trump to sign it now that money was back in there. And so that's how that came about. But still, compare that $250 million to the $16, $17 billion that the Biden-Harris administration have set aside for HBCUs, not to mention student loan forgiveness, not to mention record historical numbers of small business administration loans to Black Americans, not to mention the fact now that the Small Business Administration will even lend money to felons. That was something the Biden-Harris administration did as well. The earned income credit, the child care credit that, again, Biden and Harris put into place, which lift a lot of Black families out of poverty. And I'm just scratching the surface. So his gripe with the Democratic Party is unfounded. Now, he may have some other issues with the Democratic Party, that's him. That's his conscience. If he has those other issues, like the LGBTQ plus support that the Democratic Party has for that community, or abortion, that may be his issue as well. I don't know. But when it comes to economics, the Democratic Party has been the biggest champion of civil and economic political rights for Black folks in the last 100 years. with the election of the first black president, hopefully the soon to be election of the second black president and first black female president, and a host of other firsts. And who fought all that? And let's not forget the appointment of the first black female Supreme Court justice. Who fought all that? The GOP. So why he sits there and attacks the Democratic Party for what it has done for blacks, it doesn't make sense, because the GOP has done nothing, and will do nothing if Trump gets back in office. Everything they're going to do is going to be to prop up and preserve white supremacy. Let's go back.
Kamala Harris that's not taking this job seriously. Everything's a joke. Everything's a laugh. She hasn't rolled out any legitimate or substantive policies on anything that would even help most Americans, minus the $6,000 for $6,000 that she spoke about on the debate, and the $25,000 to buy a home. As somebody that owns a lot of real estate, of course, I would raise prices on that. To piggyback off with the last guy said, she has a socialist agenda. She's trying to do price fixing in grocery stores. I mean, I can go down the list. Nevertheless, I just don't think that she's right for this country, or that she will move this country forward, or that she would make solid economic decisions. Last point, for the past 4 years, we've been in multiple proxy wars across this country. She acts like nothing's happening. You know, it's really a bad situation.
All of these voters are leaning towards supporting Donald Trump, some more than others. But I wanted to understand whether it was a more pro-Trump or anti-Harris vote. And I got more than I bargained for. Let's listen. By a show of hands, are you voting for Donald Trump or against Kamala Harris?
For
Donald Trump.
Hold on. How many of you are voting for Donald Trump? Raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. How many of you are voting against Kamala Harris? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay.
Why am I voting for Donald Trump? To put it simply, I trust him to forward America's interests, foreign and domestic, more than the other candidate, period. And I can expand on that. Why Black people vote for Kamala Harris and Democrats more generally is a bit layered, but essentially, and this is complicated, Black Americans see themselves in a separate lane from Americans. So much so that when Donald Trump says, I want to be the president for America, they assume white America, when that might not actually be. I don't think that's what he means. And evidence shows.
Does this young man know? Does he know for the first 350 years of this country, the first 240 years, African Americans were enslaved. And then for the next 100 years, African Americans were legally segregated under the Plessy v. Ferguson case. And it was only after the Brown versus Board of Education case that segregation was removed, and that was only 60, 70 years ago. So when he says African Americans, and today there continues to be systemic racism that marginalizes African Americans. So when he say that Black Americans see themselves as being separated from the rest of America, what the heck does he expect? Does he know history? Does he know any history here? It's not our fault that we feel marginalized. We are marginalized. We are other. Dr. King talked about that otherness, that thingification that white Americans imposed upon us Black folks. So these people, again, are misinformed, the victims of disinformation. They just simply don't know. All right?
What it means. So Black Americans have a tendency to separate themselves from what is good for Americans more generally.
I'm voting for Donald Trump because I can see that when I listen to, the news and everything, I see that, it's very biased. I've never seen one president be attacked so much. So to see that the whole establishment is against one person kind of makes it seem like he is actually going against the establishment. I don't like being taken advantage of and trying to be made a fool of. And I feel as though the Democratic Party and most of the people who are who oppose him are trying to make a fool out of me. And personally, I don't like that. I was living better when Trump was in president. I had more money when Trump was in president. So, it seems as though there is one particular entity that is trying to destroy the country and cripple the country. And
Who
he's
is that?
very.
Who is that? Who's that?
That would be the Democratic Party, the more liberal party that does not align with my values per se, and to let a lot of things they let a lot of things go that doesn't allow with align with my values. So I
So let's take what he says in part. First, he said that he's never seen anyone attacked like Donald Trump. Well, Donald Trump has been the victim of 2 attempted assassinations. So, okay, I give him that. But when it comes to personal attacks, when it comes to being vilified, when it comes to being racially attacked and so forth, you would have to give that to Barack Obama, right? You would have to give that to Barack Obama. And you would also have to say that Donald Trump opened up this can of worms. And he is the reason why, part of the reason why this country is so polarized. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. Trump exploited the divisions that was already present in this country. He used it to get where he wanted to get. He knew it was there. They communicated it to him. He saw it. He knew it. He's been a white supremacist all his life, and he exploited it. He reached in that ugliness and grabbed a big chunk of it and threw it in America's face. When he came down the escalators talking about they're sending their murderers and their rapists and so forth. I mean, that, and of course, then the way he treated the Arabs, the way he treated African Americans and so on. So he opened that can of worms. He let that genie out of the box, which is what concerned me about him from the very beginning here. So this young man, to say that Trump has been vilified more than anybody else, I have to keep in mind these are young men. And then when he says he doesn't like being made a fool out of, I hate to inform this young man, but when you become a supporter of white supremacists, you made yourself a fool. You just became Boo-Boo the fool because you're putting in the hands of people the knife that they're going to use to cut your throat and the throats of your family, your friends, and so forth. These folks don't understand what we're up against because they're too young and they have been, again, distracted with a whole lot of disinformation. Let's go back.
So I feel as though if he were to lose, then we would be on our way to a communist country. And I like being able to.
I must say that Trump is the one who is close friends to one of the biggest communist countries in the world, Vladimir Putin. I mean, Trump is the one who is a big supporter of one of the biggest communist leaders in the world. I don't understand when they say that.
And I like being able to be successful. I like having the opportunity to be successful. I don't believe that we should all just be on a level playing field because I don't believe the person that doesn't work as hard as me should have as much as me. I believe that if you work harder, you should have more. If you don't work as hard, you shouldn't.
Okay. KD and then James.
Thank you, Frank. The reason why I'm voting for Donald Trump is because simply I want to make America great again. I think the last 4 years we have seen over-promising without a plan.
Did you hear that? He literally said he's going to vote for Trump because he wants to make America great again. Whew. You see what I'm saying? He literally repeated their slogan, make America great again, does he not realize that they're talking about taking us back to Jim Crow? At least, maybe deeper into that ugly history? And he wants to help them do that? Does he not know during that era, black men like him were lynched and castrated? Does he not know that they were beaten and stuff I can't even really talk about in this recording? The stuff that was done to black men, to humiliate, to emasculate black men. Does he not know that that's what Trump means when they say make America great again? They want to take us back to that period. I told you, we failed. And the public education system failed because they hide this history. They don't want Americans knowing this history. So the stuff that is coming out of these young men's minds, this is what I wanted you to hear. This is the result of disinformation. This is the result of misinformation. This is the result of a school system that's failing. This is the result of white supremacy talking points being spread abroad. And it gets worse. I don't think I'm going to be able to go through this entire recording, but I'm going to tell you where you can find it so you can listen to the rest of it. But let's listen to a few more comments here.
What I watched on the debate stage were a lot of lofty goals from a Democratic candidate who's been vice president of the United States for 3 years and 8 months. And nothing that she proposed, she or spoke on, she had a plan attached. Even as things have come back in the grocery stores and things like that, I can't pay for things every single week. I run out of food during the week, and then I'm having to really ration to get through. So I think the only person that spoke to my values and what I want to see in the future, and who has he said a concept, a plan, but I'm going based off of my lived experience. And my lived experience under Donald Trump as president was a lot better than the Biden-Harris administration. So that's how I feel about it.
In a sentence, can each of you explain why Trump and not Harris? Manuel, you start first.
Yeah, I would say because of track records. Yeah, I've seen Donald Trump's administration compared to Biden Harris administration, and I know, and I can say for a fact that Trump was better, basically.
Okay, Damien from Florida.
Yeah, I'm a Baptist minister, so I'm fully for Trump because he's going to close the border, because he brings a certain level of strength and direct communication that this country needs. And the economy was roaring and great under him. And so I'm looking forward to seeing that again.
I got to follow that up. So first he said that Trump is going to close the border. As I pointed out to you, Trump blocked an immigration reform bill that would have closed the border, that would have put more border agents on the border. Trump blocked that. Trump blocked that. That was never mentioned in this entire conversation. He said Trump brings strength. Strength. Well, is it strength when we watched him kowtow to Vladimir Putin? Was that strength? Really? And then he said a strong economy. Again, folks, the research, just simple Google search, just type in, did Donald Trump create a great economy or did he inherit it? One. And it just a bunch of articles pop up showing that Obama handed him a great economy. Trump did not create a great economy. One of these guys goes on to say, well, the fact that he's a billionaire shows you that he is a successful leader. Listen, when you get $1 million as an inheritance when you're 2 years old, and then $400 million when your father dies, all you got to do is double that, and you're a billionaire. It's not how far you've come. I want you to hear me on this. It's not how far you've come. It's how far you've come from. It's not how far you've come. If you start out on the 50-yard line and make a touchdown, That's not as impressive as starting back on the 1 yard line and running and getting a touchdown. And many of you African American men, we start out quite often with nothing. Nothing. Behind, we start out in the end zone, not just on the 1 yard line. We start out in the end zone, and we're still expected to outdistance our white male counterparts. And quite often we do. But if I start in the end zone and make it to the 75-yard line, and they start on the 50-yard line and make it to the 75-yard line, my accomplishment was greater. Because it's not how far you've come, it's how far you've come from. All right, let's go back to these guys. A little bit more.
California.
For me, I think Trump is real, logical, and feasible, right? Harris, delusional, virtual.
Chris in Maryland.
Biden Harris put the needs and interests of Israel, Ukraine, and migrants first. And I think Trump will be a little more for American interests.
Katie from Utah.
I think Trump, because Trump wins the election based on the economic sentiment is pessimistic, not optimistic. We have foreign policy disasters, multitudes, and immigration is just a calamity. Yep. As much as Kamala Harris is running a campaign for president in her own right, after that debate performance, it's clear that the Biden-Harris 2024 campaign continues on.
Petrell from Mississippi.
Yeah, so I favor Trump based on what he did during this last term, so I'm all for him.
And what specifically did he do that you like the most?
Yeah, he brought more jobs into the economy. That's one thing that I did like. We didn't have to worry about wars or anybody coming up against the United States. He was very adamant in dealing with foreign policy. So I admire all of that about Donald Trump.
Carlin from Florida.
I just believe Kamala Harris isn't ready to become president of the United States.
Dan from Illinois.
That I must respond to. We're talking about a woman who has been in politics all her adult life. First as the district attorney of San Francisco, and then attorney general of the largest state in the country, and then a sitting United States senator, and now roughly 4 years as vice president. What experience at running the government did Trump have? And what experience does he even have now? Because according to a lot of the people who worked for him, he didn't know what he was doing. He was so horrible at the job, a lot of those people are not endorsing him, including his former vice president, his former Secretary of Defense, several of his chief of staffs. I think all three of them, Mark Meadows, Mick Mulvaney, I think his name is, as well as John Kelly, General John Kelly. I mean, they were, as chief of staff, they were right there with him. His Secretary of Defense, Tillery, I think his name was. I mean, these and a whole bunch of other people, John Bolton, National Security Advisor, James Comey, FBI Director, these people are on the record saying that they would never support him again because he didn't know what he was doing. He was not a deep thinker. He was not inquisitive about the job. He didn't prepare for the job. He didn't study for the job. So these are really uninformed young men here, very much so. Now, I would love to go through more. I didn't get past the first 15 minutes, but you can find this conversation on Straight Arrow News. That's what the acronym SAN stands for. Straight Arrow News. And be warned, the conversation gets even worse in terms of the misinformation, the disinformation. It goes a level further than what you've heard so far. But I wanted to bring this to you and make some comments on it. Let me just end by saying, yes, apparently, more African American men, a higher percentage than normal, seem to be interested in Donald Trump, but most African American men are not with Trump. If 1 out of 4 supports Trump, that means 3 out of 4 do not. Okay, so all is not gone just yet. But there have been these pro-black imposters out here feeding these guys heads with a whole bunch of stuff about why the Democratic Party is not this or that. And again, I'm not a Democrat, but that conversation has been one-sided. You never hear those pro-black imposters point out all the opposition that the GOP brings toward any kind of progress that Black Americans are making. And the GOP is staunchly opposed to Black progress. But you never hear those pro-Black imposters talk about that at all. All you hear them talk about is what the Democrats have not done. Yet, it's been only the Democratic Party over the last 100 years to do anything to help Black people progress. That's just the facts. Whether I like those facts or not, those are the facts. And I just happen to like those facts. And that's why I am pushing the Democratic Party. I am pushing, hoping that Kamala Harris wins this election. For 3 reasons that I've given you in the past: to defend our democracy/freedom, to defeat Project 2025, and to demand civil rights. There are a whole bunch of other reasons. Someone recently asked me to make a list of why not to vote for Trump and why to vote for Kamala Harris. And by the time I finished, I had about 30 things on that list. And most of them were why not to vote for Trump. Okay, so yeah, go over to Straight Arrow News, SAN. Frank Luntz is the president of this news agency. And you can hear the rest of this conversation. It gets much worse, especially their attacks on Kamala Harris and their congratulations or applause for Donald Trump. It's a brain twister, quite frankly. All right. But anyway, I am Attorney Augustus Corbett, one half of the Defiant Lawyers. Thank you for tuning in. Until the next time, peace.